You're listening to Making the Cut, the mostly true life story of a retired surgeon from 1C Productions.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Seitz, founder and president of 1C Productions, where thoughtful entertainment comes alive. Our content, like the show you're about to hear, sometimes includes mature themes and subject matter. This may be offensive to some listeners. It is only intended for mature audiences and has been categorized accordingly. While 1C does not present this material in salacious form, we do include it as the relevant and important story element that it is. I invite you to learn more about this show and other 1C content at just1c.com. That's JUSTONEC.com. And now it is my honor and joy to bring you Making the Cut.
I had been physically intimate with Kate, and this opened a new awareness in me of how a man can love a woman. I struggled to reconcile this. Did it represent danger or opportunity? My mother's repeated abandonments led me to believe that a chance to become closer with a woman represented only danger in the long term. But on the cusp of my life's new beginning at a school I'd only dreamt of until now, I wanted to be wrong.
A friend invited a group of us to Chinese dinner downtown to celebrate the end of our time at Burnage. We'd done it. We were all headed off on new adventures that could well and truly define the rest of our lives. At the restaurant, I was seated next to Marie, a Swiss au pair, about my age, whose last week in Manchester coincided with mine. I felt she was drawn to me, which helped with the self-pity and wounded ego left behind by the Kate experience. Hearing of my going to medical school, she told me that her father was an orthopedic surgeon in Zurich, her mother a nurse. Munching Chinese, sitting among our English friends and speaking what German I could remember with Marie, created an air of familiarity, intimacy, and closeness. She had been caring for 3 small children, living a year in relative isolation in the Lancashire countryside, miles from Manchester. She gushed about her experience, glad to have a chance to talk freely, having limited access to adult conversation. I could not help but compare her to Kate, who was more reserved. Marie was much taller, slimmer, with the soft material of a dress clinging to and accentuating her legs. I suppressed the lust she stirred. Kate taught me the kind of pain that giving in to lust led to. And besides, hadn't we been warned over and over at Burnage that it only takes one to create a lifelong consequence?
Is your girlfriend going with you to London?
Kate's face floated through my mind. I pushed it away. I don't have a girlfriend. Anyway, I'll be too busy for one. She half smiled and winked at me. A crafty creature. Her question was a fishing trip intended to find out if I had a girlfriend. She turned away and focused on the food on her plate. She gave me the European goodbye kiss on each cheek, not needing to stand on her toes.
Here, take my number as well. I have the afternoon free in a couple of days and would like to spend it with you.
I'll be packing. The place will be in a mess.
Not to worry.
Marie!
Hello again.
Her perfume delightfully overwhelmed me as she once again kissed both my cheeks. A light kiss, though, quickly turned into more. how about a walk? We strolled through Fog Lane Park, a short distance from the circuit, in warm sunshine, unusual for Manchester. Sunbathing couples, in various stages of undress, lay on the grass, radiating contentment. She took my hand, telling me about the isolated family for whom she had been an au pair, expressing regret we had not met earlier, for she had felt cut off, and our friendship would have been fun-filled. She had not taken any time off, since she did not know anyone, accumulating a couple of weeks' holidays. Her enthusiasm for our friendship was very evident, puffing up my recently deflated ego. I wasn't used to such ardent attention, though. I didn't feel worthy of it. How should I handle this? I'm moving to London next week.
London?
I want to get there a few days ahead of the start of term to find a flat. I'm on the waiting list for Commonwealth Hall, a student residence.
Can I come too? The family I work for has agreed to allow me go sooner than planned. Perhaps I could stay in your flat. We can see London sights together. I have plenty of pocket money to spend before returning to Zurich.
What? The idea of seeing the sights was exciting, but I needed to familiarize myself with the work situation, get the first term books, and generally prepare myself so that on day one, the rubber could hit the road. I did not have a flat, or money, or time of my own to spend entertaining her. I'll be busy trying to settle in.
I'll help you.
I meant I'd be preoccupied. I was scared of the sexual side of me, of what it could open up, how it could hurt me in the end, how it didn't uphold the Burnage standard for a nice boy. We returned in contemplative silence to 9A the circuit for a cup of tea. Marie felt like more than I could deal with.
I hope you've brought me back here to make love.
Seeing my surprise and discomfort, she changed the subject. Although I found her fetching and was more relaxed now that I did not have to study, I was unprepared to jump into bed with a stranger. It felt too risky. I couldn't yet see clear through my grief over losing Kate. We parted with her usual flurry of continental kisses. Her departure brought a sense of relief. In London, the housing department at University College told me that the prospect of getting a room in Commonwealth Hall was uncertain. Instead, they gave me an address in Baker Street, close to the medical school, where two young secretaries had rented a furnished flat, subletting one room to an American law student. When I got there, I found a well-appointed 5-bedroom flat, with a kitchen and 2 bathrooms, opening off a long corridor leading to the furthest room. I took that since it had the most natural light and quiet. I had imagined living by myself in a dingy flat in London and hated the idea of being alone. It never occurred to me that I would be subletting a room. I felt lucky to find accommodation so quickly overlooking Baker Street. The girls took great pains to inform me which refrigerator shelf was mine. I should not eat other people's food, as the kitchen was a common area, and which bathroom I could use. Having moved in, I announced that a friend, a Swiss female tourist, would be visiting for a few days on her way home. They did not object. When I mentioned that she would not be sharing my bed, they exchanged looks and told me she could temporarily use the 5th bedroom. That being settled, I went the following day to meet Marie at the station. A weak sun shone through the clouds like in Monet's painting of the Thames and the Houses of Parliament. Walking to Euston Station to meet the train, Marie's visit put me in 2 minds. I had 3 workdays and a weekend to organize myself prior to the great adventure of medical school. During that time, I wanted to discover the shortest route from Baker Street to Gower Street, open a bank account, browse at H.K. Lewis's medical bookshop at the corner of Gower Street and Euston Road, locate supermarkets, find a laundrette, and explore the menus of the least expensive Indian and Chinese restaurants. Marie's coming was an ambivalent distraction. She was not really my type. She was not studious enough, and she seemed far too eager about our relationship. Yet I did find her background interesting. She was cultured, well-heeled, and the idea of having a German-speaking female friend with whom I could do some sightseeing appealed to me. On her must-see list were the art galleries, Trafalgar Square, St. Martin in the Fields midday concerts, the Tower of London, Parliament, and Buckingham Palace. Perhaps we would attend an evening show. She wanted to do some Oxford Street shopping for family presents and was not penny-pinching. She might even pay for me when we went to the various venues, helping to support a medical student with limited means. No matter how I felt now, I had agreed to the plan for her to come, and there was no way now that it was upon us that I could withdraw the general agreement for her to stay with me.
Yoo-hoo!
A hand waved some distance along the platform. From its direction appeared the tall, elegant Marie, wearing a red beret and a white mohair coat, each flapping stride accentuating the curves of her body. I love women wearing hats, the kind they wear at weddings, at the turn of the century, or ascot. For reasons unknown to me, though, I intensely dislike berets. Or maybe my sudden annoyance was really just fear, based on ambiguous feelings evoked by her visit. Marie approached me, smiling keenly, dropped the cases, and hugged me in a manner I found too enthusiastic in a public setting. Shall we take the tube to Baker Street?
Oh no, we must take a taxi. I'll pay. I don't want to take all this English money to Zurich anyway.
Sitting too close to me, she loquaciously told me about a train journey and her excited anticipation of seeing me again. My discomfort grew, and then she laid her hand on mine.
I'm sorry we didn't make love in Manchester.
Her frankness embarrassed me. How do I handle these advances? We arrived at my new abode. My two very curious flatmates opened the door. Marie was full of European effusiveness, clearly overwhelming the very reserved British girls who showed her in. I carried her cases to the only unoccupied room, with Marie in tow. She tossed her coat over the back of a single chair, and for the first time I saw what she wore beneath, a cashmere sweater and a closely tailored woolen skirt ending above the knees, once again accentuating her appealing figure.
Oh, look at your view of Baker Street, and how simple this is, having everything we need. This is lovely for the time we are going to spend together.
When I showed her that she had her own room to herself, her demeanor, her ardor, cooled. How about we go out for a cup of tea and some food shopping?
Ah, this tea is delicious. Ooh, it has been such a long day. Perhaps we should have an early night and start our sightseeing first thing in the morning.
That's a good plan. I'm thinking to show you University College, the mask and figure of Jeremy Bentham, its founder, the medical school, and the iconic University College Hospital.
Sounds lovely.
We returned to the flat and put away my purchases. Finally, night came.
Would you like to come to my room?
I felt awkward. Wasn't I, as the man, supposed to make such advances? How could a seemingly nice girl like her do this? I hesitated. Seeing my dithering, she gave me a good-night peck on both cheeks, and then waited. Her nearness and her faint perfume made me question my own hesitation. I was of two minds. I wondered again, sex for the sake of it? Sex without romance or love? Just lust? Would this be taking advantage of a woman? For me, lovemaking felt like a way to communicate something deeper between two people. The touching of souls, I hardly knew her. I'd never heard her laugh or listened to her deepest dreams and fears. Yet here she stood, willing to lay herself bare, and vulnerable. On the other hand, why not share the comfort of touch? An antidote to loneliness and belonging. Should I please her or show restraint? I had only met her twice. To abandon myself, to give myself over to this, I needed a sense of emotional worth, of belonging, of being cherished. Still, we stood at her door. Finally, she stepped forward to kiss me on the lips, a quick one, which tasted good, then went off to bed. Relieved of the conflict, I turned off the light and went to my own room, settled into my bed. Marie's advances had awakened my memories of Cairo, ironing Bajita's breasts at 4 years old, being betrayed by my sister, scolded by mother, ignored by my father. I pushed the thoughts away, let myself think only of Marie. Her kisses, her presence, what she wanted. I grew hard. At that moment, she appeared in a silk gown, stepping into my dark room, eerily lit by the street light streaming through the curtainless window. Guilt immediately replaced my what-ifs. My heart raced. I began to panic, and as Marie stood beside the bed, the silky gown slid off her, and the chiaroscuro of the dim, yellow Baker Street light fell on her pale body, highlighting her stark nakedness and shadowy triangle that crowned her magnificent legs. I relented. Marie slid under my blankets, laying her warm body against mine, cradling my head in her hands. I could feel her breath. She was in command, wordless, seeking my mouth. She gave me a deep, lingering kiss, murmuring something I could not follow. Was it in English, German, French? My reservations and self-control evaporated. The surrender was good, peaceful, guilt-free. My anxiety drained away. We rested, cooled off. We listened to each other's breaths. The passing traffic and human voices carried on the orange light coming through the curtainless window. We had made each other feel as alive as two people could. Invigorated and deliberately, we flipped positions and went again. Exhausted and sweaty, we lay side by side in the narrow bed, her head on my shoulder, long hair plastered to her face.
Bei mir bist du schön.
I was taken aback. Freimut, my German-Romanian brother-in-law, frequently crooned this old song. He was Jewish and a distant relative of Theodor Herzl, who was the father of the Zionist organization that promoted Jewish immigration to Palestine. Was she gratified following our pleasure, or Jewish? What else didn't I know about her? I did not ask, but I wondered as I stared at the ceiling, marveling at what we had just experienced. This stuff was addictive. Guilt and apprehension soon crept over me again. Concerned that someone might knock on my door, I spoke. Marie, my bed is not wide enough for us to get a good night's rest for sightseeing tomorrow. She left, reluctantly, opening the door without even listening for anyone in the corridor. In the morning, we walked to the university's accommodation office near Gower Street on our way to the National Gallery. She held my hand, swinging our arms like youngsters. Her caring and genuinely happy disposition pleased me. There was a twinkle in her eyes. The clerk told me there might well be a room available at Commonwealth Hall, that they would know by the next day.
What does it mean that there may be a room for you? Will you leave the flat tomorrow?
If there is a room, I will move. Commonwealth Hall provides meals.
I'll leave in 2 days. Why not a last stay in the flat until then? I'll make us a nice dinner.
My heart shuddered. I was losing control of the situation. She was good company, but her idea felt too close to domesticity. We can see things tomorrow once I've moved. Perhaps we can stay the last night in Baker Street. We returned to the flat in the late afternoon with aching feet. Following a bath, she suggested we retire to her room ahead of dinner. This time, we invested greater degrees of passion and appreciation for each other's bodies. More brains than brawn. We made love purposefully rather than merely fucking. Afterward, we got Chinese. Marie, perhaps I could spend my Christmas holiday with you, in Zurich, instead of with my grandparents in Wedel.
I'm not sure about that. Let's just enjoy today, all right?
I sensed she was setting boundaries. Our dalliance did not extend to Switzerland. She had drawn a line beyond which I was not welcome. I knew the act well enough to recognize it, even if it came from a woman other than mother. That night, Marie was not as responsive to my kisses. With our pleasure, ambiguous tears cascaded in silence down her cheeks like a gently overflowing Swiss fountain. Concerned, I lingered in her bed. Marie. Marie. Are you all right? I waited several more seconds. And then retired to my own room. The next morning, Marie helped me pack, holding a greater silence than any she'd exhibited since we'd met. Finally, she spoke.
There is a fast train with a Channel ferry connection to Zurich this evening.
Oh, I'll go with you to the train station.
No need. I insist.
We both had set our priorities. I don't know what had triggered her pain and didn't share what her rejection meant to me. Commonwealth Hall in Cartwright Gardens stood a brisk 10-minute walk from the anatomy department in Gower Street, my home for the next 18 months. A week into the beginning of term, I received a box of Lindt chocolates and a very brief note.
I've arrived safely. I miss you.
I loved the chocolates and convinced myself that I was too busy with my new reading assignments even to pen a short reply. Maybe she would forget me. I forged my new medical student life. New friends, new classmates, the medical world. Marie sent the occasional picture postcards of the Alps, then weekly, lengthy letters on stock perfumed paper, all addressed to Commonwealth Hall. Curious, I skimmed through them, set them aside, studied anatomy, dissected my cadaver, read physiology of muscle function in total wonderment as to the human workings. I intended to answer her letters. Compared to my scrawled, voluminous lecture notes, she had a neat hand. But classes and classmates filled my life. Her letters began arriving daily, left unopened until past midnight when I was too exhausted to study.
I miss you. I yearn for you. I love you. Why don't you write? I'm thinking of returning to London.
Alarm rushed through me. How did this get so out of hand? I wasn't enamored with the idea of a woman and sex. I was enticed by Fred, my cadaver. Its mysterious allure was appealing in a completely different sense. The touch of the leathery tissues, cracking open the chest, excavating with my 5 other fellow students his heart. So much to learn. One student would read the instructions from our anatomy manual, as a couple of us dissected and the others sat around. The formaldehyde smell that lingered on my hands, no matter how often I washed them, and then lingered in my nasal hairs. The sick jokes of my colleagues that broke the tension, the revealing of the body's mysteries, how it was constructed. My entire medical school experience felt compelling and all-encompassing. Lunch meat and evening steak became no longer appealing. I had neither time nor appetite for anything beyond learning. More letters accumulated through my mail slot, opened sporadically, emotionally dripping and weighing me down, tiresome, competing with the daily deluge of medical knowledge, needing immediate assimilation, daily quizzes, weekly tests, and preparations for my first big midterm exam. Barely 3 weeks after lectures started, and Marie had departed, another letter addressed to the Department of Anatomy arrived. Standing in the dim and dank basement, on my way to the dissection hall, I scanned its many pages hastily.
I have missed my period.
What?
Pregnant.
Paralyzed by fear, the words struck me like a blow to the gut. The ghastly phantom of Mr. C, my biology teacher in Manchester, appeared from the depth of the dark and drew closer, mouthing the curse he preached each Friday to a class of 27 virile adolescents. Only one sperm, boys. It takes only one to ruin your life. My world teetered on annihilation. My life was pointless. I had sacrificed my entire future for an individual I barely knew. Letter in hand, I sat down in the middle of the gloomy basement steps, my mind numb, unable to continue to the next lecture. Rory McCloy, a new friend from the next dissecting table, sat down beside me while the others streamed past. I was helpless to explain my situation, stuttering in bewilderment and extreme shame. I stared into the abyss of the dark basement corridor, powerless to understand what befell me, sensing eternal hell. He took the letter, reading aloud.
My belly is enlarging.
I could not believe this was happening.
Early morning sickness.
I could only hang my head.
I think I'm pregnant.
My stomach knotted. Rory read on. I could hear Marie's voice as she wrote, her words flowing across the page in a graceful curve too lovely for the harsh words.
I went to my grandmother in the cantons, confiding in her. She was a kind and understanding woman. She could keep secrets. She took me to her elderly family doctor, who appeared like I imagine you'll look in the future. He diagnosed pseudocyesis. Have you heard of that? Have you studied it?
What was she talking about?
I wish you had been there with me. The doctor looked like you. He tested my urine. The result was negative. A few days later, I had my period. I was so sorry. I wanted to be carrying your baby.
I sat, paralyzed. What would I have done if the result had been otherwise? as if totally unrelated. Mother's past and vague assertion she'd once considered an abortion when she'd found herself pregnant with me nebulously floated ghost-like past my mind. An irrelevant trivia keeping me from my present reality. Rory's voice penetrated my haze.
The result was negative. Do you hear that? It's nothing. You're all right.
I never read the rest of her letter. I never replied. She never wrote again. I vowed celibacy forever after.
I set aside relationships with the opposite sex in favor of education. But when one has wounds incurred during childhood, there exists an impossibility of ignoring the pain for very long. Thankfully, my mother wound now retreated to the back burner. The wounds inflicted by my father and the lack of cultural certainty quickly filled the empty space by rearing their ugly heads.
You've been listening to Making the Cut from 1C Productions. Making the Cut was written, produced, and directed by Rebecca Seitz, based on Michael McGead's manuscript, Mastering the Knife. Noah James played Michael McGead. Other roles were brought to life by the voice talent of Michelle Tischer and Harvey Miller. Audio engineering provided by Zischer LLC. Learn more at makingthecutpodcast.com.